meetings, you can do so many more than you used to do. As Bill said, and companies are more available because they're not on airplanes either. So generally, that works brilliantly well. I love all this stuff.
Excellent. From a just moving to emerging markets, we've had a question come in. Can you comment on what you'd like to see from small cap companies in emerging markets from an investor's perspective? So, from at the coalface, what are you looking for in that particular sector? Heinrich, could I ask you?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, usually you would think that the standards are not as high as in the developed markets, and this is backed by my experience when I also covered some Russian names 5 to 10 years ago. But applying the standards from the developed markets is definitely something. And then you have to deal with a couple of additional, sometimes country-related risks, political risks, which are part of your daily life, which are influencing your business culture. So you have to be vocal and explaining about that and how you deal with that kind of risks. There are also certain sectors particularly exposed in emerging markets like oil, like mining, which of course have some more needs of explanation when it comes to ESG and risks related to the business model from that. So this is a bit different. Also, when we look every year for the best IR people and the best IR stories in emerging markets and in the Western world. So these are typically the differences when you look from one to the others. And here you have to find a different layer of the story if you are communicating for an emerging market company.
Bill, can I get your thoughts on the emerging market side?
Oh, sorry. Who are we going to there?
Sorry, yes. The question was, can you comment what you'd like to see from small cap companies in emerging markets from an investor's perspective?
Yeah, I don't touch anything in the emerging market, so I have to excuse myself from this one.
Okay. Good to me. Gervais?
We have quite a lot of UK quoted companies which operate in emerging markets. And obviously it's not just mining companies, but stuff like a huge advantage from the point of view of an investor of some of the companies in emerging markets is it diversifies risk. And when you've got just one, particularly the UK, which is a relatively small nation, the risk's all a bit concentrated. And so I love the fact actually we've got all sorts of companies overseas. It does add uncertainty. Obviously, it does mean sometimes things go not just wrong, but very badly wrong, of course. But actually, what it also is actually you get involved in things which make disproportionate returns as well, where you carry extra risk. Sometimes you make a disproportionate return. It's kind of interesting as well how your attitudes can change. Many of us have probably been worried about the long-term pattern of, say, some of the Russian businesses, and you worry about that. Some of the companies which are some of the best in terms of ESG reports and engagement and CO2 improvement are Russian companies in my portfolio. They're UK quoted. So there's a big surprise. I was just knocked over when I found some of these companies and perhaps they have to try a little harder because they are from outside and they are trying to convince us. And so sometimes you meet companies on the emerging markets which are actually generating not just good but outstanding outcomes for investors.
That's excellent. Thanks. Well, I'm going to throw you all a curveball or a googly or wherever you're sitting in the world at the moment. Bill, SPAKs, what do you think?
There are so many companies that do it the old-fashioned way and come public with financial history and things like that. That I haven't spent much time with them. In a market like this where you've had such a dramatic pullback, or in the case of small value stocks where you don't have to pay a lot for good quality merchandise. From my point of view, and I don't speak for anyone else except our group, is that I don't need to go look at things that have to come public through something new and better, because the old thing works pretty well for us. And my fear of SPAC are that there's just too much trust, and trust is the wrong word, but there's too much hype, I think, in the manager of the of the SPAC, and you don't need that. You don't need another complicating factor in your investment process. And I haven't seen anything that was so truly compelling that I had to sort of buy it because of its structure as a SPAC.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Heinrich. Any thoughts on SPACs?
No, not much to add from my side. Would agree with what Bill said. Also haven't put too much work into it. Agree. It's a lot of hope and hype baked in, and there might be a time coming when there are more questions around it. So, but it's a lot of sentiment also in this kind of stuff.
Okay, Gervais, I've got a question for you. I know we've touched on it slightly earlier. Does COVID-19 and the move to virtual meetings open up access to international issuers? And you will have greater access, but does it encourage the access? You know, has it switched the lights on, for want of a better term?
I mean, you know, most of our portfolios are defined by the listings. So we invest for our clients in UK quoted companies. And so although there are some international companies which come through and they want to have meetings, and sometimes I do meet them actually just because they've got interesting things to say, I'm generally restricted from investing in international issues. That's not zero. I mean, if there's a very, very compelling reason to go beyond your mandate, you know, there's usually a bit of space in the portfolio. But generally, wonderful thing about markets is because the jigsaw pieces are all over the floor and there's a lot of mispriced stocks, you can hopefully make very, very attractive returns just by buying local companies, locally listed companies. So I'm not. I don't think it's opened the door. You know, Zoom is there. You can certainly communicate with companies which are listed, perhaps in London, which operate in other places. We are seeing companies coming to London now, which are more, you know, based in overseas territories, which are using London as their primary listing. There's a Swiss company coming to the market very shortly. There's quite a lot of Israeli companies which have come to London over the years, and then there's quite a lot of the mining companies which obviously have principal operations outside of the UK, but have UK listings. So that will continue. But I don't think the door's been open to international companies which are listed overseas to find it easier to get fund manager support.
Right. Okay, thanks. Well, I'm conscious that we are slowly coming to the end, so I've got the $1 million question. Can each speaker give a final 2 lines of advice for small cap companies, and how can companies take advantage of the current environment? Heinrich, could I put that to you to start with, please?
Yeah, it's as I said, know the investor base, know who is important for you, have a good and constant story to tell, be involved in strategic meetings and strategic decision making by your top management so that you understand and can explain what's going on. And yeah, be open also when it comes to problems. So this is very important in building trust. I think that's quite summarizing my thoughts.
Thanks, Bill. Could I get your thoughts on that?
Sure. I would take advantage of a rare time in the investment world where you could get away with not giving guidance, and you won't have all the knuckleheads in my business asking you, you know, about the latest data point or what's going to happen next quarter. You can actually get away with talking about bigger issues like this is our plan for the long term, or this is why we invest these dollars that we do, or this is why we take care of the employees. As Gervais said, you know, we meet, we review them twice a year, what have you. You know, you could focus on those things that make your company the unique little company that it is. And I think at a time like this, where you're not sitting in a meeting one after another, you know, talking about, you know, what's your gross margin going to be next quarter, you could really sort of take advantage of that time and use it for more meaningful discussions, I think, about your company. So I would hope that would be the sort of good thing that can come from this.
Absolutely, narrowing it down. Thank you. And Gervais, just you finally, your thoughts on that subject in the current environment?
Right at the start, I talked about the kind of divergence between share prices, which have often gone up, and the economy, which has gone down. And this is down to just extraordinary amounts of stimulus put in the market. There was some Bank of America figure suggesting that billions of dollars have been injected on a per day or per week basis into the markets, and it's had a huge effect. Going forward, I think debt's going to be a big problem. You know how I regard debt. Take advantage of this opportunity to trash your debt. Just it's not, it may not be a lovely price, and you may have to take a bit of a discount to the current price, which is a bit disappointing. But boy, does it set you up. My view is that capital becomes scarce. Risk capital becomes really scarce over the next 10 and 20 years. The advantage of being listed is access to capital when private businesses are really struggling. As I say, you'll be able to buy assets from the receiver for disproportionately low prices if this is right. And if you have a geared balance sheet and you want to raise extra equity, you'll really struggle. You'll really struggle. If you've got a very strong balance sheet and the new capital is going into a small price acquisition, which is delivering transformational returns, you'll be able to walk that fundraising. It'll be dead easy for you. So get your house in order in terms of debt. Just trash your debt at this moment. And I think that will be a great way to set the business up to take advantage of the coming markets.
Okay, just the final thoughts from all of you. Thanks for that, Gervais. How open are you to direct engagement from issuers? If so, how should they get in touch, and what should the message be? And I understand we've only got a couple of minutes left, but just wanted to get your thoughts. Bill,
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. How do we feel about companies calling us directly and say, hey, we want to come in and see you?
Would agree, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
We love that, and it happens all the time, especially as the coverage has dwindled. So we encourage that.
Right, Heinrich.
Yeah, it's the same over here. I mean, companies know us from our very long-term relationships with them. They don't need a broker anymore to contact us, to find us, to arrange meetings, particularly in this online world. You don't have to set up a trip to a city and arrange and plan everything. It's we are just a phone call away. This is what differentiates a good IR department from a bad IR department. As I said, know your investors for what they stand for, what their interest is, and where you can reach them. That is definitely a very good and efficient way.
That's very encouraging to hear. Gervais, similar thoughts? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I do tens of meetings a week with companies. So rather than the screen, I'd rather meet the company and have a chat. It's easier to make a more informed decision after such a meeting. Clearly, there's a limit to my time. I can't just work through the middle of the night. So I can't fit everyone in, but absolutely call direct, very helpful with it.
Great, thank you. Well, I really appreciate your time this afternoon and this evening, gentlemen. Thanks very much for all your thoughts. It's the Blue Ribbon event, so hopefully it's gone down very well. And yes, thank you very much, and I'll hand back over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank
you very much indeed. Cheers then.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And thank you so much to Jonathan, to Bill, to Heinrich, and to Gervais. I thought that was a fantastic panel. So really appreciate all of your input, and really appreciate all of our audience members that asked questions on Slido. As I mentioned before that panel, that's always one of our most sort of interactive and sort of most enriching sessions, I think, and I certainly learned a lot from listening to our panelists. And that concludes our programming for today, but don't log off yet, because there are still activities to be had on the platform after my closing remarks. I think listening to today's sessions, it's very clear that, small cap investor relations teams are facing a challenging environment at the moment. But small cap investor relations teams have been facing a challenging environment for several years, really thinking about, how the economics of the sell side have changed, whether that's because of MiFID II or not. And many IR teams have responded in, really impressive ways. And, we're really impressed by how industrious a lot of small cap IR teams can be. And I thought that was especially validated, during that final session, when we heard the panelists saying that, during the last 6 months, a lot of IR teams have been, especially impressive in their outreach and their transparency. And I think, what a lot of companies are going through right now in responding to COVID-19 are actually, IR best practices as it relates to transparency, consistency of communication, not hiding during a time of crisis, and, doing your best to communicate to the investment community. And I think the best IR teams are able to do that and act as that two-way conduit between the feedback received from the investment community and the management team, and how that feeds into conversations around strategy. I think that will be especially important in the coming months, if not years, as we look towards hopefully a COVID-19 recovery that is sort of prolonged. And again, that really just underscores the importance of effective investor relations and elevates the position for those who do a fantastic job. And I think we've heard from many of those people today. So, a huge thank you to all of our speakers today. Now, as I mentioned, there is still more available. A big part of the IR Magazine events is that we intend to connect people, and we intend to have a sort of peer-to-peer discussion through these events. Of course, that's slightly more challenging in a virtual environment, but it is not impossible. And so what we're moving into now is one-to-one networking. The event platform that you're logged in on right now will remain open for a period of time. And if you go to the networking tab on the left-hand side, you will be matched with another participant, and you'll have 5 minutes to talk to that individual and get to know them. If you know the person you've matched with, or you'd like to move on, you can, I would suggest, with the person's permission, move to the next attendee. But it's a great opportunity to get to meet some of your peers, discuss perhaps challenges they're facing, or get their opinion on challenges that you are facing. This is something that a lot of our attendees at prior events have gotten a lot out of, and so we hope that many of you are able to make the most of it today as well. Before we head over there, though, I do want to put a couple of other things on your radar. If you've enjoyed today's event, which obviously we hope you have, I'd like to put an upcoming event on your radar. IR Magazine's Global IR Forum is coming up from the 6th till the 8th of October. This is a 3-day event, and we're taking a slightly different approach this year. So, as I mentioned, our events intend to bring together peers to have that sort of peer-to-peer learning. And we're really specifically targeting that with the Global IR Forum. So there are specific tracks that you can follow based on the sector that you are in, or based on the region that you are in. And the timetable of the event is really built around that sort of peer-to-peer discussion and networking and, information sharing. So please do go to the IR Magazine website, irmagazine.com/events, to look up information about the Global IR Forum. As I say, I think it will be a fantastic opportunity to hear from, some fantastic speakers, the likes of which you've heard from today, but also to, get that networking with some of your peers. And I think this really is a time where that discussion is especially important and especially valuable. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our partners for today's event. It's no exaggeration to say that we could not host events like this without our partners, many of whom you've heard from today, and potentially many of whom you may connect with during the one-to-one networking shortly. Of course, a huge thank you to our speakers. As I say, I've learned an awful lot from today, and I hope that you have too. And finally, thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate people attending our virtual events. We understand it's a slightly different experience. We would appreciate feedback on your thoughts on how today has gone, but we really appreciate you attending today's sessions. Finally, my name is Ben Ashwell. I'm the editor of IR Magazine. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you at one of our future events. Thank you.